Thank you very much, Tim. So I'll be presenting on strengthening accountability takeaways for government. So this part is going to be a set of recommendations that have come up from the various research that we conducted, particularly on government. So I'll be speaking about laws, policies, and regulations that are essential to support accountability. And then I will also be talking about coordination, as well as unclear roles and responsibilities, about the implementation of these accountability systems. And then the last part will be about citizens' engagement, because it was mainly these three areas that the recommendations came up with. Next slide, please. Okay, so regarding laws, policies, and accountability mechanisms, the first set of recommendations are regarding the need to harmonize, strengthen, and execute laws and policies for water resource and wash at national and subnational levels. And we have taken an example from Ethiopia to illustrate that laws are not really harmonized with national programs, for example. So there is one WASH national program, which is being implemented in Ethiopia since 2013. So it's a flagship WASH program. However, this particular program does not really have a water resource management component. And as a result, water abstraction in this program is not regulated. So again, there are similar cases in others, but just to raise this as an example. The second recommendation is regarding the need to strengthen accountability systems and relationships. So these initiatives are really found in a broken up manner. So there's a need to harmonize and strengthen these accountability mechanisms. So systems, so we're talking about mechanisms, standards, regulation, monitoring, stakeholder engagement, and enforcement, not only for the government sector, but also the private sector. The third set of recommendations are regarding the need to build capacity, also the need to work on outlook, and the need to depoliticize accountability systems, because particularly looking at the horizontal accountability institutions, regulatory institutions, we've encountered that they really don't have the capacity to really work on accountability. So there is a need to build their capacity in terms of finances, in terms of human resources, and also the technical issues that they need to have in order to actually conduct the task. And also regarding outlook, there is a lot of gap in terms of how community views accountability, but also how accountability is viewed within the government institutions. So there's a need to work on that as well. Of course, depoliticizing accountability systems is also very much important, and something that came out in the findings, as part of the findings of our research, many of our research. Next slide, please. The second set of findings is regarding the need to have clear roles and responsibilities, as well as better coordination across government sectors. So many of our research that covered the government aspect of accountability show that there's a need to clarify institutional roles and responsibilities between actors for WASH and water resource management. So particularly the need to eliminate conflicts in functions. So just to raise two examples, one from Ethiopia. Water quality monitoring is supposed to be conducted by the health sector. However, at the moment it's being done by the water sector. And this is because of the confusion that exists. And similarly in Tanzania, again, there's a confusion or unclear roles and responsibilities, which are observed on the implementation of water supply and sanitation projects. And this is between the Water Supply and Sanitation Authority and local governments, because both are implementing the same programs, and there's no boundary that limits this, or that clarifies this confusion. The second set of recommendations here is separate implementation and regulatory institutions, because as it stands, in many instances, we see the regulatory institutions and the regulatory roles are found within the implementing institutions, and this does not really work very well in terms of keeping institutions accountable if they are, the same institutions are also regulatory institutions. And last one is about strengthening horizontal and vertical institutional and sector coordination across water users, because one of the gaps that we've identified is that these institutions are not really working in a coordinated manner. So there is a need to coordinate the different stakeholders, both not only the horizontal, but also the vertical. But as it stands, even the horizontal institutions are not really working very well. So federal level institutions are not working with regional institutions, and then the regulatory institutions are not working with the implementing institutions. Again, the water users are basically excluded, and there's also the need to enforce this, coordination through, enforceable type of accountability system and mechanisms. Next slide. And the last bit, which is again very much important and something that really came out in many of our research, is the need to have informed engagement with citizens and users, because this is really lacking in many instances in many of the cases that we studied. So the first one is about the need to introduce strengths and accountability mechanisms such as public hearings and citizen oversight plans. So there are some improvements. For example, if you look at in the case in Ethiopia, there is low but gradually improving community engagement. This is especially within the context of the Ethiopian Social Accountability Program. There we see some improvements because the community are engaging through various mechanisms such as commercial radios. But still, there's a need to work further on such initiatives to, to expand the effort so that it includes more, expanded type of areas. And there's also the need to have such initiatives in the other countries as well. The second recommendation is regarding information, education, and mobilization for communities. This is basically to ensure access for marginalized groups, because marginalized groups are not really engaging, are not really involved in decision making. And this is mainly because they don't have the information regarding their entitlements or what they can do. And also in terms of education, they don't really have the required level of education. So, and there's also a need to mobilize such community members. The third one is support civil society to vertically integrate social accountability initiatives, because one of the findings that we have in many of our research is that civil society is not really strong enough or working strongly to towards social accountability initiatives. So if there's going to be improvement in this area, civil society is very much important. It's a very important entity, and the civil society needs to be supported. The last bit is about coordination amongst actors to increase the capacity of rural women and marginalized communities to participate in problem analysis and decision-making processes. I've talked about marginalized communities, but it's also very important to talk about rural women, because they're not really being included in decision-making and also in assessing problems. And this has been really problematic, found to be really problematic in some of our research that focused on the participation of women. And again, this is something for stakeholders to think about, for government to really take into consideration and act upon. So basically, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you. Back to you, team.